Distraction makers.
Pretty big update in terms of game changers list and ban list. So we're going to go through and talk about what cards were unbanned. There were no banned cards this time, but there were some put on the game changers list, which is like banned in half of the bracket system. You know, I think there was some discussion within the community as to like how big of an unbanning this was going to be. Wizards of the Coast took over the format after the previous rules committee banned, so like had a pretty
back in October, I think.
It was October,
or September, maybe
October,
August
sometime. Yeah, it was a little while ago. But they had a pretty controversial ban, and there was a huge uproar in the community about this. The community was very split on whether or not this was a good idea or not, and then it basically led to Wizards of the Coast taking over the format. So these are the first unbans that Wizards of the Coast has made, which gives us a little bit of insight into what they're seeing as the future for Commander. Okay, so let's go through and talk about which cards got unbanned.
Only 5 cards got unbanned. We have Gifts Ungiven, Sway of the Stars, Braids, Cabal Minion, Coalition Victory, and Panoptic Mirror.
They had like sort of 3 criteria as to what constituted a card that they thought would be good for the format. So.
Right. So this is their criteria. 1 is cards that have some fond memories associated with them. 2, cards that can contribute to positive play patterns, enjoyable decks, and or splashy moments. And 3, cards that don't create runaway games or negative play patterns.
And then they unbanned Braids.
We're not at Braids yet. So first on the list, we have Gifts Ungiven. If you're not familiar with Gifts Ungiven, it's a 3 and a blue for an instant. Search your library for up to 4 cards with different names and reveal them. Target opponent chooses 2 of those cards. Put the chosen cards into your graveyard and the rest into your hand.
Yeah, and there's another card that's kind of similar to this called Intuition, which lets you search for 3 cards and then do basically the same thing. Yeah, Intuition sees quite a bit of play in CEDH. I don't know, it's interesting. Gifts Ungiven, so they're both instant speed. Intuition costs 1 less mana, gets 3 cards. There's an argument to be made there that Intuition is just the better card. It costs 1 less. It still can get you 3 cards that win the game. Yeah, okay, so let's talk about sort of the play pattern of these cards. It's basically search your library for 3 or 4 cards, and put together a combination of 4 or 3 cards that win you the game.
Right.
So,
no matter what your opponent picks, it doesn't matter, and it's still going to win you the game. And normally that would be decided by probably 2 separate tutors, one tutor to get 1 piece, another tutor to get another piece, potentially. But this sort of ends up being extra strong because you can go and grab more. But it sounds like Intuition already has that possibility. It's just that one of those pieces is going to your graveyard.
2 in Intuition's case, yeah. You get 1 card out of Intuition. So Gifts Ungiven technically is card advantage. You get 2 cards of the 4 that are chosen, and the other 2 go to the graveyard, which then is probably additional card advantage, because you'll grab something like Savine's Reclamation, so that whether they give it to you in your hand or put it in your graveyard, you still get to bring back something that costs 3 or less. There's a bunch of different lines that essentially say, I win the game if the spell resolves. I guess what's interesting to me here is, what's the upside of this? Like, what is the upside of unbanning this card, right? Because if we look at, and I think we should do this with all the cards, right, is that you kind of have to look at sort of the extreme case, and then the case for what it is not in the extreme, and if it's worth that trade-off. If they're basically saying, okay, we're okay with the most extreme scenario here, right? We're going to put on the game changers list, which means it's effectively banned in brackets 1 and 2. It's restricted in bracket 3, but they're basically saying we're okay with the most extreme that this card could be, because we think at a more casual setting that this card is fun and interesting. And I think to a certain extent, I do agree with them. I don't know. Intuition's already there. There's already like Fact or Fiction and Hostile Negotiations, which are cards that they don't tutor, but you look at the top cards of your deck, and then somebody chooses a pile. So like these sort of teaming up with another player to like choose something is interesting. There's some political ramifications that I think are interesting, but the extreme here is pretty extreme.
You go and get your combo pieces.
Right. Yeah, theoretically.
And like there's, if Intuition also allows that, and that's also legal, it's just another card that allows you to do that, meaning it's just going to be even more consistent.
Let's weigh it against their 3 criteria and see if it fits.
Right. So fond memories associated with it. This is before my time. Is Kamigawa?
Yeah, original Kamigawa is when it came out.
And cards that can contribute to positive play patterns, enjoyable decks, and or splashy moments. Splashy moments, I could potentially see this as being part of that.
Yep.
That's fine. Cards that don't create runaway games or negative play patterns.
This seems like no to me.
It can definitely, it has the potential, but again, it's like, is it making the runaway games, or is it just giving you the possibility of getting the pieces to make the runaway games?
Okay, I get your point, but that starts to unravel a lot of other decisions that have been made. If you're basically saying we're going to let the players decide how they want to play this card, and if they want to play to the extreme, that's up to them, and that's like a rule zero conversation. But that opens a whole can of worms in terms of your logical consistency with other cards that are banned because of that very reason. Right. That like, well, this is banned because we can't, assume players are going to be responsible with it. So I think overall, Gifts Ungiven, it's a fine unban. It's a little risky, but I think it's ultimately probably fine. I think it does potentially hurt CEDH a little bit, but I think you're right that Wizards is a little less concerned with that right now.
Next on the list, we have Sway of the Stars. It is 8 and 2 blue. It's a sorcery. Each player shuffles his or her hand, graveyard, and permanents he or she owns into his or her library. Then draws 7 cards. Each player's life total becomes 7. So you hate this card.
Dude, what in the world? Okay, steel man it for me, because I don't get this one at all.
So here's the thing. I think that if someone were to play this card, I think the first time it would be so ludicrous that it would be silly, and I'd be fine with it. If someone continues to play this card, then I'm like, all right, cut the shit. Like, quit with that card.
You mean plays it again in the same game, or do you mean plays it in multiple games?
If they play it twice in the same game, I'm shooting them. Yeah. If they play it once, they get a pass. That's fine. But again, it's like that deck is forever going to be known as, well, that's the deck that you can play Sway of the Stars. So I think where you fall in line, if I'm not mistaken, is that in one of their things of cards that don't create runaway games or negative play patterns being the key thing here, that Sway of the Stars absolutely creates a negative play pattern.
Well, let's honestly though, let's look at the extremes again of the card, right? So the extreme of this card would be, you can somehow copy it and you get to play it again and again and again,
free.
Somehow, for free, whatever, and you're just continually resetting the game and the game never ends. That's pretty dumb. So, all right, we're going to weigh that against what's the benefit? What do you get from unbanning this?
Right, and I think that the opportunity for someone to do that, I think, is silly, but I think that where I stand is like, is this going to break the game? This is where it's kind of funky, and where like I'm not sure how much they are thinking about things on a hyper competitive level, because like this isn't going to be seen in CEDH.
No.
So it's not going to break the game at its most hyper competitive. So if someone at a bracket 3 through 4 wants to put this into their deck, I guess sure, go for it.
Okay, so the question becomes, how do you measure like fun generally? And if you're looking at it as, okay, well, if one player's having a great time, then great, that's all we care about. Or are you looking at the other 3 players that are subject to whatever that player's doing as fun? What's more fun? 3 people having fun or 1 person having fun? I don't know, whatever. It should be up to the players to decide generally. But if we're going to go down that road, then why do we have a ban list at all other than stuff that just breaks the game? But whatever, we'll come back to that maybe. But I don't really understand what the like fun case is for this card. That's the part that I'm having trouble seeing here, when the extreme of the card is that the game just kind of goes on forever and gets reset, and like games already last too long, and then the game's 3 hours and nobody's having a good time and the game just doesn't end.
Right.
That's a problem.
I think that they might be looking at it as the setup to do something like that is if someone wants to go and try and do that.
Let me I'm not going to do the math on it right now, but I'm also sitting here going like, okay, if you do this, the game is going to go on substantially more time, right? Like
probably
playing this even once. Like I'm just talking about the most extreme in that you play a multiple, but playing it only once is like you're resetting the game, right? People hate farewell already because of that reason. I'm like, okay,
and
well,
this is also lands. So
right.
This gets rid of your lands.
Yeah, you're starting the game over at 7 life.
Right.
That does not sound like a good time.
I think, look, again, if it's played once, I could see it as a fun, cute thing. It's like a fun puzzle to try and solve, right? Of, okay, we're resetting who can then deal 7 life to, each opponent or whatever. I think that could be kind of silly. I guess I don't see as much harm in it because I think I'm on the side of like, if this game isn't going to break it at the most competitive of levels, and the worst case is that it's going to show up at certain casual tables, again, casual being brackets 3 to 4, which is leaning less casual.
Sure, it is a game changer.
Then at that point, like, yeah, fuck it, go ahead, play with your silly card. I don't know.
Right, and like, yeah, like you could just take that attitude, right? Of you players can figure out what they want to play with, but then again, the whole idea of the structure starts to crumble if you're taking that approach. So,
yes,
for me,
I think that if that philosophy is true, that there's other cards that they did not seem to do that with.
Right,
I agree with you there.
So, Sway the Stars for me is kind of a miss. I don't really know who was asking for this card to be unbanned. I don't really know who wants to play it or play against it, but
I'm going to put it in a deck, and I'm not going to tell you, and I'm going to play it. All right, next.
My girl, Braids.
We got Braids, Cabal Minion. 2 and a black, a legendary creature, meaning it can be a commander. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player sacrifices an artifact, creature, or land.
So I think Braids is actually really cool. I like this card.
Just last week, I was telling you, I wish Braids wasn't banned, so I could put her.
The monkey's paw
in a deck.
curled when you said it, and here we are. I think Braids is cool, but I'm also like a player that doesn't really care that much about sort of these negative play patterns like this one. Sway the Stars is annoying because like it's just going to make the game go really long. But like for Braids, I'm like, okay, if this comes out like turn 1 and no one can stop it, the game's just over, right? Like basically, you just concede.
Unless you end up being able to play a white on your turn 1 tap for Path to Exile.
Sure, right. That's what I mean.
There's got to be one very specific removal spell.
Yeah, and like, if it's in the 99, I guess it's like fine, like whatever. I actually think that there's even like a fixed version of this card, which is Braids Arisen Nightmare, which I think is just it's just a better play pattern than this is. If we're weighing this against the extremes, right? The extremes is this comes down turn 1 and the game is basically over. That's the extreme, right? And then the sort of, all right, well, if that's the worst case scenario, what's the fun side of that's balancing this card out that justifies it being unbanned?
And I think that, like you said, how do you measure fun? How are they measuring fun? I think you and I are probably in the same boat. Like, I think we kind of get maybe a little excited about the idea of people maybe leaning into some more of these sort of maybe considered negative play patterns and actually wanting to play a game of Commander.
Turgid, Tiny Bones, Braids. Let's do it.
I want to play a game like that because I think that doing that every now and then can be really fun.
Okay, let's defend Braids real quick. So Braids is interesting because she's there's this thing that we call guns and butter, and guns is interaction. Effectively, it's ways to stop your opponents from winning, and then butter is anything that's investing in sort of your own economy, which would be card draw, mana acceleration, generally just like value plays. And Braid sits in this really interesting space where she is like a reusable guns engine, which normally in Commander, guns are particularly bad because you are, especially ones that trade 1-for-1 with your opponents, where like, I'm gonna play a removal spell on one of my opponents. I'm down a card, they're down a card, and the other two players are not. So you're effectively just helping those other two players. But Braids, in this way, is sort of a reusable engine, similar to Turgid in a way, where Turgid just turns your other guns into getting you advantage. But this is sort of the defense of Braids, generally speaking, is that she helps you play a sort of negative strategy, not like negative bad sort of, but just like something that's what we would maybe call a catch down mechanic, but like a way to sort of bring the table back in line with whatever it is you're attempting to do. And so I think that's great. But more casual players absolutely are going to hate this. She is on the Game Changers list, so maybe that's fine. But you are then saying, okay, if you're playing at the bracket 3, then you're signing up for that kind of an experience. Okay, so if we look at the criteria, do we already do that?
No, we haven't.
The three criteria points. This is where things get a little weird.
Cards that have some fond memories associated with them.
I have fond memories of Braids.
When was Braids played? Like, what set did she come out?
She actually came out in the set that I started playing in, which was an Odyssey block way back in the day.
And do you have fond memories of Braids?
Yeah.
Okay.
Check.
So a little nostalgia maybe for some of the players that played with Braids back in the day.
But I didn't play Commander then, right? I don't have any Commander memories of Braids, right? I have fond memories of her in like 60 card constructed, but I think I would also wager a guess that if people remember Braids from a commander perspective, they're probably not too happy about Braids. They probably remember...
Unless you were playing Braids.
Right, if you're playing Braids, you're like, hell yeah, this is great. But yeah, anyway, okay, so criteria 2.
Cards that can contribute to positive play patterns, enjoyable decks, and or splashy moments. Technically,
no.
It's pretty splashy.
Sure.
You playing Braids, everyone's like, oh.
This is the definition of negative play pattern. Like, let's be real.
Well, if we're going to skip to number 3, yes, cards that don't create runaway games or negative play patterns, this, I think, is definitely, it's the closest to being considered a negative play pattern. Now, that being said, it's not Nadu level. You know, it's not Lantern control level. You know,
okay,
you can still play the game, and you still have the option to choose which card you're sacrificing.
Well, you might not have the option.
You might not have the option depending on how the deck is played, but
yeah, that is a good point, though, right? So defining what a negative play pattern actually means, right? Negative, not necessarily in that you're like minusing what your opponents are doing. You're creating a state in which players cannot navigate out of, but the game isn't over, which is like kind of exactly what Braids does. So I don't know. Look, we'll see. It's on the game changers list. Maybe it's fine. Maybe it's not. This one's just a little weird to me given their criteria. I'm happy about it because I think Braids is cool, but
I'm gonna go and make a deck with her tonight.
Maybe they threw players like me and you a bone with this one. I guess I don't know.
Thanks, Wizards. Next up, we have Coalition Victory. Coalition Victory is 3 and Wooburg. It's a sorcery. You win the game if you control a land of each basic land type and a creature of each color.
Sure. It's fine.
Yeah, I think we were looking at the ban list a while ago.
This came up as one that we're like, this could be unbanned.
Yeah, I think that's kind of been on most people's radar for a while, where it's like, I think some people are like, oh, I don't know, Coalition Victory is still like pretty... but like what? I guess you get a 5-color creature out, and you have a basic of every land type.
Yeah. So the drawback, the sort of extreme case that they brought up in the article associated with this card was that if you have a 5-color commander and you have it in play, this is basically an I win the game card. But like it costs what, 8 mana? Okay, whatever. But like, and also you had to have your commander in play, and then somebody could just like play a removal spell against your commander in response. And the other part that was kind of sort of skipped over here, was that you have to have a land of each basic land type. So look,
who's playing basic land?
No. It's not. You could play like a dual land. It says like Forest Island. That's what it means.
You're right.
So like it's not that hard to do, but it is notable that like in a casual setting, that's not a given, right? If it's played in a very competitive setting, yeah, it's probably a given, but like nobody's playing this in CDH. So like the only other negative I can see for this card is that it can sort of feel like it comes out of nowhere, but not really. Like you could look at somebody with a 5 mana, Wooburg commander and play and go, they could do it, guys.
Right. Yeah, if someone has like a 5 mana commander, then they could have Coalition Victory.
It's fine.
Sure. Yeah, whatever.
All right, so let's look at the criteria and weigh it against what they're saying is the way to do this.
All right. Cards that have some fond memories associated with them. I don't know when Coalition Victory came out. It looks old. It looks like Weatherlight Saga era. Like,
oh yeah, it is Weatherlight.
Yeah. So I mean, that's
maybe there's some fond memories.
Maybe cards that can contribute to positive play patterns, enjoyable decks, and or splashy moments. Splashy moment. Sure. Yeah. Okay. You win that way. I think that would be kind of exciting. Yeah. And cards that don't create runaway games or negative play patterns. It doesn't make a runaway game. It ends the game.
Just ends the game.
So I think that's fine. Yeah.
Fills the criteria. That one's fine. Moving on.
Finally, we have Panoptic Mirror. It's 5. It's an artifact. It has Imprint. Pay X and tap this. You may remove an instant or sorcery card with converted mana cost X in your hand from the game. Then, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may copy an imprinted instant or sorcery card and play the copy without paying its mana cost. So, pretty cool effect. Pretty cool. Pretty splashy.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. Again, the most extreme problematic scenario with this card is that you put a time warp on it, so you get basically infinite turns, which I think are already sort of handled by the explicit rules of the brackets, at least at bracket 3, and at bracket 4.
Bracket 4, they don't care.
They don't care.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It seems fine.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some, people have fond memories of, putting some kind of cool spell on this and playing again. Oh, the other extreme problematic scenario is if you put like a board wipe on this that you could just repeatedly use. But yeah.
I think that for the brackets that are going to be dealing with this, which again, it's like bracket 3 is going to be dealing with board wipes still, but not infinite turns. And bracket 4 is going to be dealing with it. No one in CEDH is probably going to use this. So
not likely.
Yeah. So at that point, like, yeah, sure. Go ahead. Play with your silly card.
Seems fine.
Yeah.
Let's weigh it against the criteria.
Fond memories.
Maybe.
Probably. I don't know. Yeah.
Gavin Valentine said that he likes the card, so.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's a cool card. I'd never seen it, but it seems neat.
Well, it was banned, so.
Oh, okay. Cards that can contribute to positive play patterns, enjoyable decks, and or splashy moments. I think a splashy moment.
Sure.
Yeah. And don't create runaway games or negative play patterns. It technically does not create that, but it facilitates cards that could do that. That's
right. So, then we're back again to that logic of
chicken or the egg, really.
Well, or it's up to the players how they're going to play it. Yeah. But if that's the case, there should be a bunch of other stuff unbanned on the list. So whatever. It's a little logically inconsistent, but I think this is probably moving in the right direction, theoretically.
That's all the unbans.
So this is interesting. These unbans specifically feel a little bit like they're just sort of dipping their toe in to see what's going to happen. So they also released a little bit of data, which we'll get into this more into the other video, but they released a little bit of data about how the brackets are being adopted by the player base. And they cited that it's got about a 50, in some of the data they were seeing, there's like about 50% of players that are using the system.
In Magic Online, I think.
Yeah, and I'm like, I don't know exactly how they're measuring that. I'm assuming it's that somebody like makes a table for the game that they're looking for, and then they're saying specifically bracket 3, bracket 2, whatever, in the sort of like description of the game. I'm hoping that they're not, like, if anybody says CEDH, they're not taking that into the account. If they say bracket 5 CEDH, maybe that's fine.
I think that they should take it into account with CEDH. Though.
No, that doesn't mean they're using the bracket system. That just means they're looking for a CEDH game.
I suppose, but I guess if they officially adopted CEDH, then it's kind of like saying, like, well, now you're using the bracket system.
That would be really bad data. So
it's also not considering. Are they considering abbreviations of bracket, misspellings of bracket?
Sure. Yeah. Let's just go ahead and give them the benefit of the doubt that they collected some amount of decent data that says about 50% of players are using this. So I think that part of why they were so conservative with the unbans is that they're concerned that there's a fairly large portion of the player base that would see these as just being available all the time, where they're not using the Game Changers list. So these are coming off the unban list and onto the Game Changers list, which sort of puts them in an in-between stage for most of the players, where you can avoid these cards if you're using the bracket system and playing at brackets 1 and 2. But if you're not using the bracket system and you're just going off of whether something is banned or unbanned, these cards could just be ubiquitous. They just be in the format now.
Right.
So they're put into, I guess, kind of a weird position. And I wonder about the logic of, I guess it's a half measure in some ways, right? Because you're basically admitting that, well, we're not really confident that this bracket system is actually going to become the norm. You know what I mean?
I mean, I don't know if I totally agree. I think that, there's a possibility that someone's just looking at it in the binary of just like, is this banned? Is this unbanned? But more than likely, if anyone's paying that much attention, they're also probably choosing whether or not they're going to adopt the bracket system or not adopt the bracket system, which is no different than someone just setting a sort of a rule 0 before going and playing a game anyways.
Right. Yeah. And you could rule 0 this stuff or whatever if you wanted to. I think generally speaking, my critique of what I'm sort of seeing as a format philosophy is just some of the inconsistency that we brought up, which is this a format where players are the ones who are being given the tools to decide what they want to play or not, or are we just in another committee situation where they're basically saying this is the way we think Commander should be. And I think the unbanning of Braids is at least a nod to them being more open to different types of play experiences than what the previous committee was. But yeah, I mean, we'll talk about the Game Changers thing again in the next video. But I do wonder about there still being this sort of wanting to shape the format through a curation. Like, are you curating, or are you making a tool for players to curate for themselves?
Right. I think that trying to curate for a competitive-minded experience makes perfect sense. That's what Wizards has done in the past because 1v1 has always been competitively minded.
And you have the data to
the data to do that.
Yeah.
So you can easily go and make sure that you can recognize, hey, this Nadu guy is kind of fucking cracked, right? And you can take the axe to it. But currently trying to curate for a sort of vague measure of fun, right, or enjoyable experience, I just feel like might be a target that is always going to be moving and they're never going to be able to really get it right on. So I think that if they are starting to be a little bit more open to the idea of maybe we just give players the tools broadly to go and use however they want to use these tools. And really the primary focus is on recognizing, hey, these are major staple cards that are very powerful. So just so you guys know, these are strong cards. That's the game changers. Or saying, hey, these cards are way too good. They're way too powerful, or they, are busted. They're going to be banned. If you enjoyed listening to us talk about today's spicy unbanned news, please feel free to give us so spicy. God, Braids.
Whew.
It's actually really not spicy. I was really disappointed when I read the list. But
I was hoping for something crazy.
I know. Braids was exciting, but after that, yeah.
Let's get nuts.
Yeah, just unban everything.
Yeah. Exactly. Black Lotus.
Yeah.
Channel.
The Power 9 coming back.
Why not?
It's going to cost $500. We're having this exclusive reprint. And they get rid of the reserve list.
There you go.
Oh.
Power to the players. That's what I say.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, good.
Please feel free to give us a little like and a subscribe, maybe a comment down below. Also, if you want to keep talking about this and complain more about Magic the Gathering, you can join our Discord. That's what we do mostly on there. You can find a link to that in the description down below.
No, that's not what we do in the Discord.
That's what's happening today.
We make games in the Discord.
We do make games in the
Once
Discord.
a month, we have a open playtest session where we all hang out and talk about the games we're working on. So if you're interested in that, you can join our Discord. Actually, this evening should be a playtest. So...
Are you putting this out on Thursday?
The next video comes out. So yeah, this evening, 6 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, we're doing an open play test so everybody can hop in and test games and check stuff out. So if you're interested in that, make sure you join the Discord, and we'll see you there.
Hope you're ready for the flood that's going to come in.
Maybe. We'll find out. Anyway, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.